everyone again, I'm Paul Richardson, and today we're looking at changes being made to our technical log procedures. This presentation takes around 16 minutes and highlights the husbandry and deferred defect processes. First, let's look briefly at our current technical log, which is the day-to-day record of all our aircraft operational and maintenance activities. It contains a large number of pages inside a ring binder. The acceptable deferred defect list records any unserviceable equipment or items that may be permitted for flight in accordance with M.A.403. The aircraft husbandry defect status sheet records any defects which have no effect on the airworthiness of the aircraft and do not affect its operation. The ground run or air test sheet has details of any tests required to be carried out either before or tests needed during flight. The aircraft configuration status sheet records temporary changes to the aircraft configuration, like passenger seat changes or cargo hook being fitted. Let's focus on the acceptable deferred defects list and the aircraft husbandry status sheets. The current system relies on the management of any carried aircraft defects being entered in either the acceptable deferred defects pages or the aircraft husbandry status pages. Of course, some defects could be repaired or might require spare parts, so the aircraft would be AOG or aircraft on ground. This choice has led to defects being incorrectly entered into the husbandry status sheets, which are not visible to pilots and operations who would be unaware of potential issues with defects which could affect the aircraft operation. Audits have highlighted this problem, and the potential for flying aircraft which are unairworthy is an unacceptable risk. The decision has now been made to remove the husbandry status sheets from the technical log. This eliminates the potential for errors, although historically there were very few occasions where the husbandry status sheets were used. Now the decision regarding aircraft defects is, can they be repaired and made serviceable, or is the aircraft on ground and awaiting parts, or could the acceptable deferred defect process be used? The advantage in removing the husbandry log is that this will reduce paperwork and at the same time eliminates the possibility of errors. Before defects may be entered into the acceptable deferred defects log, they must be checked against the minimum equipment lists, or MEL. Each aircraft type has a minimum equipment list, which is produced by operations and fleet support. This is part of the Operations Manual Part B, also known as QID 173, although everyone just calls the manual the MEL. The MELs are based on the manufacturer's master minimum equipment lists, and fine-tuned based on Bristow experience, equipment fitted, and operational requirements. The company policy is to carry as few deferred defects as possible, although the aircraft captain always has the final decision to operate the aircraft with acceptable deferred defects or not. Locating the MEL is easy to do using the portal. Let's have a look. First, use the Maintenance and Operations tab to select company maintenance documents. Then scroll down from the list of approved maintenance organisations and select the UK. Select UK Company Manuals, and then the Operator's Minimum Equipment List, or OMEL. Each one of these can be clicked, read and printed out if needed. This one is the MEL for the AW189. Let's look at the content of the MEL. Inside the minimum equipment list are a list of items that may be inoperative for a period of time until rectification can be accomplished. Only items listed are permitted to be deferred, and specific regulations regarding this must be adhered to. This list is in ATA numerical order for indexing. The permitted rectification intervals for each item are specified using a code. We'll look at this a little bit later on in detail. Maintenance procedures highlight actions that may be required when systems are being deactivated. These could be circuit breakers being pulled or warning labels being temporarily fitted in the cockpit. Operating procedures highlights to the crew about any changes to aircraft or system use when an item is deferred under these procedures. These elements form the content of the minimum equipment list. It should be emphasized that using the MEL is strictly controlled, for example when spare parts are unavailable to fix a defect, but it must not be used when reduced manpower or a lack of time to fix the problem is the issue. The 4 rectification interval category codes mentioned earlier are called A, B, C and D. These codes used in the MEL tables specify the time limits for defect rectification to occur. The time limits should not be exceeded and exclude the day of discovery of the defect. Category A items do not have a standard interval, but shall be rectified in accordance with the conditions stated in the MEL text. Category B items shall be rectified within 3 consecutive calendar days. Category C items shall be rectified within 10 consecutive calendar days. Finally, Category D items shall be rectified within 120 consecutive calendar days. Normally, repairs will be made and the defect cleared in the shortest time possible, but in exceptional cases, a single extension may be requested to these intervals. B, C and D intervals may be extended once only, but Cat A items have no extension permitted. Extensions are only permitted with the signed authorization physically located at the aircraft's base. Now here's a sample extract from an MEL for an electrical problem with AC generators. Each item in the MEL has a reference number, which is used later with the paperwork recording the deferred defect. This MEL reference is 24-21-01. The rectification interval permitted is Category B, or 3 days, excluding the day of discovery of the defect. The number of installed AC generators is 2. Only 1 generator is required for dispatch, which means that 1 generator may be deferred. If the number installed and the number required were the same, then deferring 1 would not be permitted. The Remarks or Exceptions section provides further requirements or details. Maintenance or operational requirements would be listed here. There are guides available based around using the technical log and how to correctly process the information. Any defects occurring with the aircraft would be entered into the technical log by the crew or maintenance staff. QID 113 is the Continued Airworthiness Management Exposition, or CAME for short. Part 1 of this book contains a detailed description of how to manage the technical log and its pages. The SAP User Manual is GBL M336. This details the processes needed for SAP EMX entries. Both of these manuals are available for download from the portal. Defects are therefore managed or processed using the CAME and also controlled using SAP EMX. Let's focus on the technical log. Here is the main page. We'll just look for now at the section that handles defects. Normally, when a flight has been completed without any defects, on their return to base, the captain would annotate nil in this box. Signing with the time completes the entry. Should a defect be discovered with the aircraft by the crew, the captain would annotate the defect description in this box. In this example, a generator fault has been highlighted. At this point, the aircraft is considered unairworthy and no further flights are permitted. The aircraft needs to be repaired to continue flight operations. In this Action Taken box, details of actions carried out must be entered. Following fault diagnosis procedures, this defect required a part not currently available on site. A decision was made that the defect will require deferral in accordance with the minimum equipment list and also entering in SAP EMX. Referring to the MEL, and the CAIM, it is permitted to defer one AC generator. So the information is used by a type-rated and authorized engineer to raise a deferred defect. The details are entered into the deferred defects record of the technical log, and also on the front page of the technical log. Details are also entered into SAP EMX as a defect notification and a spares requirement. By deferring the defect in SAP EMX raises a new notification when the defect is to be rectified. Spares required must be ordered against the new notification. On the front page of the technical log, the deferred defect details are entered. And the SAP EMX entry is completed. Remember to defer the defect as well. Use the GBL M336 SAP manual as a guide if needed. Non-airworthiness defects may also be deferred and entered into the tech log as usual. Non-airworthiness defects which do not adversely affect the aircraft operation are often husbandry items, but typically fall outside the MEL. This example is a label requiring replacement. Due to lack of spares, the defect can be deferred, adding information to the action taken section of the tech log. Looking at the deferred defects record, the non-airworthiness defect is entered. Notice that the MEL reference can be marked as not applicable or NA, as the deferment is not in the MEL. The duration for the defect limit has been selected as 30 days. SAP EMX requires 30, 60, 90 or 120 days to be selected. In order for a defect to be classified as non-airworthy defect, it must not fall into any of the following categories. A defect listed in the MEL always takes precedence. A defect that adversely affects the operation of the aircraft, such that standard operating procedures are impeded. For example, when an engine oil pressure reading exceeds the normal range. A defect that adversely affects the safety condition of the aircraft. For example, a structural crack. A defect that could potentially cause injury or harm to passengers or crew. A fluid line leaking into an avionics compartment could be an example of this. A defect that would put installed emergency equipment or its operation at risk. A hole in a fire extinguisher pipe could be an example of this. In any case, a defect shall not be deferred if the engineering certifying staff believe that it seriously hazards the flight safety. Such defects must be rectified before further flight. Confusingly, SAP EMX provides a husbandry work order process ZL05, which is a separate function and must not be confused with the techlog deferred defects or husbandry log. This function must not be used to manage aircraft defects, but is an SAP function to pre-order parts in advance of a future inspection or replacement requirement. Finally, when writing in technical logs or deferred defects, only use a blue or black ink pen, usually a biro or similar, and on no account use a pencil or use correction fluid to erase mistakes. That's the end of our presentation. Thanks for your attention.